1 minute until showtime. Show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Yaron Brook Show, Living Objectivism episode today. And today, first, before we get to the topic of today, aren't you all, just sensing this feeling of relief, of just the world has just this evening become a much better place for everyone? I mean, the government shutdown is over. They reached a compromise. The government is functioning again. I am so happy. I was really worried. My life was turned upside down. What would I have done if not for Republicans and Democrats reaching a deal and opening up government again? That's my sigh of relief. Life is so much better now that the government is open again. All right, we're not going to talk about that today. It's boring. Maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. But, Washington's game where they think they're really, really, really important, and they play games of power with one another, and they think we should all kind of worship it and grovel, before them. Not that interesting, actually quite boring. All right, today we're actually going to talk about selfishness, what it means, what it is it a good word? What does the word represent? What is selfishness? Is it a virtue? Is it good? Is it right? So a lot to talk about, and many of you know this is a topic I debated in New York City. When was it? It was last week. Yeah, last week, and there were some good things about the debate, and I certainly enjoyed it, and I think I made some good points, and I think I convinced some people, although supposedly I lost the debate because more undecided switched to the other side and switched to my side. But I thought I made some good points, and if I can convince 10% of people switched over to my side from either being undecided or being against it, and if I can convince 10% of the audience in every talk that I give, then I consider that a massive success, particularly if you include YouTube and everything else. But the debate was frustrating to a large extent because it didn't get to the heart of the real issue. Gene Epstein, my debating partner, my sparring partner, wanted to focus on what does the definition say about selfishness. And to a large extent, I don't really care, and we're going to get to that, why I don't care about what the dictionary says about the definition of selfishness. And therefore, we never really got to the heart of the issue of selfishness and the whole topic of selfishness. So I want to delve deeper. I also want to maybe give some better answers today to the objections and to the dictionary issue that he raised. So I think there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of interesting issues here. Also, we can go all day just talking about selfishness, what it means, what it implies, how to live a selfish life, why one should live a selfish life, and on and on and on. So there's a lot here to cover. A lot of this is going to be dictated by what interests you, and that the best way to convey to me is by calling me, because it really is hard for me to keep track of your comments on the various chat forums. So if you are interested in asking a question or making a comment or making a suggestion vis-a-vis is selfishness a virtue, please call in 347-324-3075. And I'm going to assume that if you're calling in, and of course you've pressed 1, as I always need to remind you, but you press 1 so that I know you want to ask a question. I'm going to assume that by calling in, you've actually got a question on this topic. You're not just talking about you don't want to talk about some other issue, but you want to ask a question about selfishness and morality. So please call in, and I'll try to answer your questions. There's a lot of issues a lot of good questions that can be asked. Some questions were asked at the event that I think need a lot more elaboration. Somebody asked about children, which I think is a whole topic that one can discuss in the context of selfishness. I think there's a lot to talk about sacrifice, what self-sacrifice means, how sacrifice is another one of these confusing terms, a package deal, just like selfishness. We'll talk about what package deals are. So tons of stuff to talk about. Now, again, if you want in on the conversation, 347-324-3075. I've got it on the titles of all the different mediums that we're distributing here. You can call up, press 1, and you can ask a question. Now, I've already got 2 people in line who want to ask a question. Again, I'm assuming you want to ask a question about this topic. For those of you who have not seen the debate yet or are interested in seeing the debate, it's on Reason Magazine's Facebook page. It's on Reason Magazine's Facebook page. It's a Facebook video where you can actually watch the whole debate. Those of you who are listening on different platforms, we're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and on Blog Talk Radio. You can switch between them if you want video. Then obviously YouTube and Facebook make sense. If you want just audio, then Blog Talk is probably your best bet. And all right, let's just jump in, and let's talk about selfishness. And I want to make this clear. And those of you who've called in, you're in queue. You're going to be first. Let me make a few points, and then I go to you, because otherwise, if you start me way down the line, it'll just be too distracting. So let me make a few points before we get to that. The real question is, before we even get to the concept of selfishness, the real question is, what kind of moral code should one live by? So what kind of moral code should one live by? That is the basic question in ethics. That is, what ethical system should one adopt? What systematic approach to the question of how to live should one take? And there are many answers to that question. And selfishness, the morality of selfishness, the morality of self-interest, and I use self-interest and selfishness as interchangeable. Again, as we'll talk about later, the exact word is not going to matter in argumentation with the culture. The culture is going to take any word we use and distort it. Now, what is a moral code? A moral code is the values and virtues that one adopts in order to make choices about what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, what is evil and what is good, what kind of life one wants to lead, the kind of guidance to make choices about the important decisions in life. And I think somebody like Jordan Peterson provides people with moral guidance. I don't think his morality is crystal clear, and it's clearly based on a Christian moral code, but it's a moral code. I think a wrong moral code, but it's a particular moral code. And Ayn Rand is arguing that one should adopt a moral code that is consistent with life. A moral code for living. Well, for living, you've set it up as life is the standard. If life is the standard, whose life? Your life. So for Ayn Rand, the fundamental choice that all human beings face is the choice between existence and non-existence, life and death, survival or non-survival, going out of existence, which means losing one's life, dying. And that is the context in which one needs guidance. All other animals, all other living beings have the decision mechanism built in. They know how to survive. They know how to live. They know what life demands. A plant needs water and sunlight. A cheetah needs to eat certain things, and it needs to be fast, and it is fast in order to track down its prey and eat it. And it's all coded. It's all programmed genetically into these animals, what they should and shouldn't do, what is good and what is evil for them. With the standard being what is good for their life, what will promote their life. Now, they can't change. They can't reprogram it. They are stuck with whatever the programming is. So when the environment changes, when the game dries up because the climate has changed, or because the water's run out, or because there's a ice age or whatever, the cheetah cannot change. It either moves to try to find an environment that's still suited for its particular means of survival, or it dies. Now, evolution created is too strong of a word, but human beings have evolved in kind of an amazing way. Human beings have evolved this ability to reprogram, this ability to reevaluate their environment and to change it. So when it gets cold, they've evolved to figure out, use their reason, use their free will to figure out how to survive in the new type of environment. They have evolved to have a faculty of reason that allows them to change. But the principles that allow for human survival are constant. They do not change. The principles that allow for human survivals do not change. So if we choose to survive, if we choose to live, and survive not just as an animal, but to survive as a human being, as Ayn Rand says, life qua human life, man's life qua man, flourishing, succeeding, a successful life, then there are certain principles that must guide us. But the standard, notice the standard is a selfish one. The standard is one's own life. The standard is how does one live to make one's own life good? And only then do you get into the question, well, how do you treat other people? Should you be nice? What about charity? Those are down the road. The first point is that the purpose of this, of my life, and the purpose of morality in guiding my life is to achieve my well-being, nobody else's. And, if it doesn't turn out, that exploiting other people was a way in which one achieved, then we'd have a problem in morality because the moral code wouldn't be universal, but then, the standard wouldn't change. The standard is what's good for me, what's good for my life, what's good for my survival. That's the essential. And that is to be contrasted with conventional morality, everybody else's morality, what everybody else thinks, which is living not for your own self, living not for your own flourishing, for your own success, for your own survival, for your own life qua yourself, but living for the sake of other people. living for the sake of society, in quotes. Living for the sake of the needy, living for the sake of the poor, living for the sake of God, living for the sake of the tribal leader, living for the sake of the proletarian, living for the sake of the racial class. But living for someone else. And that is a fundamental distinction, right? Who are you living for? Who should be the beneficiary of your own action? And that's a fundamental question in morality. And Ayn Rand says, you should be the beneficiary of your own action. It's your life. Other people's lives are not more important to you than your life. It's your life. You're going to either suffer through it, you're going to either, have a miserable, pathetic, horrible, alienated, angry, frustrated, perverted life. Or, on the other hand, you could be happy. You could be successful. You could flourish. You could enjoy. You could relish this life. It's your life. Choose. So for Rand, for objectivism, your life is the standard. And then the question becomes, what is good for your life? And that's not obvious. That's not obvious. And one can see why some people think, well, if your life is the standard, then all those people lie, steal, and cheat, they're all being selfish because their life is their standard, and they're just trying to make their life the best that it can be. So the first thing to understand is that the choice is you, them. That's the fundamental choice. Or there's a third alternative, which is more and more popular. Who needs ethics? Who needs morality? Who needs to choose? It's all subjective. It doesn't really matter. There are no principles. There are no guiding principles. There's no way to tell. You just do whatever you feel like doing. You do whatever works in the moment. There are no principles to guide your life. That's a pragmatic, subjectivist, pragmatist approach to ethics. So Rand says no. Your life, making your life the best life that it can be, is the moral standard. And then the question has to be, what does that entail? What does that entail? How does one make one's life the best life that it can be? How does one live qua human being? How does a man live qua man? And here man means male or female. And of course, the answer is what makes all human values possible? What makes human life possible? What makes human success and flourishing possible? It's kind of an empirical question in a sense. It's also a question of just observing people in the world around you. But it really is a question of, well, I don't know. Let's look. How do we get food? Food is a basic need that all human beings have, that without it, we cannot survive. So human survival depends on food. Well, where does food come from? Well, if you ask a group of high school kids, as I did recently, they say the supermarket. Without realizing, the level of abstraction. How do you get to supermarket? How do you get to supermarket? But yeah, it does come from the supermarket. But how does it get to the supermarket? How do supermarkets come into being? And why are some food in the supermarket and some food not in the supermarket? What is it that makes the very simple need for food, how is that need fulfilled? And of course the answer is somebody had to figure it out. Whether somebody had to figure out agriculture, or whether somebody had to figure out how to hunt, because we don't have the genes for hunting. We don't have the genes. This is the whole evolutionary biology. We don't have the genes for hunting. We don't have the genes for agriculture. We have to figure both those things out. And it's not obvious how you figure them out. It's a whole scientific method. And in the case of hunting and agriculture, we have to cooperate with other people. We have to communicate. But first we have to figure out what actually is going on. Plant, seed, water, something grows. We can make an industry of this. And then if you get to supermarket, we have to have private property, and we have to have systems of logistics, and we have to have a whole supply chain. And we have to have somebody figure out how to build a supermarket and make a supermarket and price everything. All of that depends on one thing. All of it depends on one thing, and that's reason. And you can take every one of the most basic human needs, material needs, spiritual needs, and boil them down to we need a reason. It all depends on reason. So the first point is that if you're truly selfish, if you're truly interested in your own well-being, what is required is that you be rational, that you use the faculty of reason, because that's inductively, we can see that's where all of human values come from. We're not, counter to the evolutionary biologists, we do not have the programming necessary to survive and to thrive without the use of our reason. The scientific method is not ingrained in our genes. We don't know how to do any of these things without exercising our minds, without engaging them, using them, focusing them. So notice the difference here. Altruism, the opposite of egoism, the moral theory that tells you that the purpose is to live for other people, is all, it has nothing really to say about what you should do with yourself, other than to tell you to sacrifice for others. How much, when, there's very little guidance. I mean, more philosophers kind of, debate these things. Peter Singer debates how much of your money you should give away to charity. But it's all for the purpose of others. It's not about your flourishing. It's not about your success. It's not about your happiness. Now, one of the things my debating partner wanted to do, and most people I debate want to do, is they want to blur the differences. Oh, no, you become happy by helping other people. Compassion is a good thing. Whether that is true or not is irrelevant. Is that a fundamental? Is the fundamental way in which we improve our lives is through helping other people? Is the fundamental way in which we attain self-esteem, or we attain success in life, or we attain happiness is through helping other people? No. The fundamental is reason. And then we need to apply the question of how does reason apply to our relationship with other people? And Ayn Rand does that. But the other side wants to tell us, no. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They don't want to actually go out and tell people, what you need to do in life is suffer. What you need to do in life is actually live for other people. Don't think about yourself ever. I mean, that takes the kind of integrity that a philosopher like Augustine Comte or a philosopher like Immanuel Kant had. Integrity in the cause of evil. But nevertheless, they followed through. They believed in something and they followed through on what they believed. No, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to tell you you should live for other people, but you would be better off somehow because of that. By what standard? What evidence? Well, there are these empirical studies now that show that if you help other people, some neurons get fired off in your brain, and therefore that's proof that altruism is good for you. But that's not altruism. Altruism is the placing of the well-being of other people above your own. It's not about helping other people. It's not about opening doors. It's not about being polite. It's not about being nice. So they wanted, and Gene Epstein, he wanted to say, I agree with you on. It's wonderful for people to self-actualize. He wanted me to use the word self-actualize. But when it but he didn't, if you really listen to what he had to say, he didn't view that as what morality is about. He kept going back to, well, but people can also be good, which means they're also compassionate. For him, morality equals compassion. And compassion stands in for self-sacrifice, because he doesn't actually want to tell you to self-sacrifice. He wants to make it feel good. So he called it compassion. So it's always tricky to debate these guys. Partially it's tricky to debate these guys because they won't actually, it's not that they won't actually go to the foundations. It's because they don't know the foundations. They're evading the foundations themselves. They don't want to believe that the moral code that they believe in is a moral code that advocates for complete self-abnegation, complete self-denial, and complete self-sacrifice. They want to have their cake and eat it too. All right, so it's a challenge because it's never put in those stark terms. Now, I want to get into this question of is selfishness about hurting other people, about exploiting other people, and why is that a confusion, and why that is a confusion that must be addressed, must be dealt with. Must be dealt with. Because we'll never win as long as that confusion exists and what the source of that confusion. So I want to get into all of that. But let me take a couple of questions first because these people have been waiting on the line patiently. I know in the chat I'm seeing a lot of people kind of ask questions, but I can't really get them because it goes too quickly. So please just call. I mean, I don't know why you have to be shy. Phone is easy. It's free. Even though I'm in Puerto Rico, it's no longer long distance. Just call 347-324-3075 with any question you have on self-interest, egoism, altruism, this whole question of what is morality, what's its purpose, how to live a good life, anything surrounding these issues. Call in 347-324-3075, and don't forget to press 1. Now, all 3 callers, I've got 3 people in line, have pressed 1. Good for you. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Good evening, Dr. Brook. This is Skylar.
Hey, Skylar. How's it going?
Well, can I read a short passage and then ask you a question?
Sure.
All right. This comes from a blog on Pathos.com. It reads, self-fullness allows for self in connection, regard for me and for you, and for that wonderful area of new possibility, discovery, innovation, co-creativity, where we can both get everything we want. And my question is, have you ever heard of this term, and do you think it's a sign of cowardice for anyone to use it instead of selfishness?
Self what?
Self-full, S-L-E-F-U-L-L.
Self-full. And read it again. Read what it describes it again.
Sure. It allows for self and connection, for me and for you, and for that wonderful area of new possibilities.
Yeah, but it's
innovation.
It's bullshit, if I can be so crude.
Exactly.
It's complete and utter bullshit. Now, notice, too, the focus of selfishness is on self. And everybody wants to take this, and this is what altruism has taught us. Everybody wants to take it. Well, what about relationship with other people? Stop. We're not going to go to other people. We'll do that later. First, you have to have a relationship with yourself. First, how should I live my life? And only then can one ask the question, okay, in the context of how I should live my life, how should I relate to other people? But that's a secondary question. That's not the primary question. The primary question is, how should I live a life for me? How do I live the best life I can live for me? And yes, other people are necessary for that. But you see, the fullness is immediately goes to, oh, this is a way to include other people in yourself and live a holistic, stupid, it's just a way to place other people as the center of your life while still pretending to be concerned with the individual's happiness. And this constantly is what people do. right? Because again, almost nobody wants to be Mother Teresa. Almost nobody accepts Mother Teresa's morality, a morality of suffering, a morality of self-negation, a morality of unpleasantness, a morality of poverty. Almost nobody wants that. They want to be happy. They want to be successful, but they also know that what they're supposed to do is care for other people. So they want a morality that has both, and that's what self-fullness or whatever it's called is trying to do. And that's what, it's what enlightened self-interest, it's what all these terms are trying to do. They're trying to soften the focus on self. No, you know what? To hell with all of you. Morality, life, my life is about me. I want to figure out what's going to make my life the best that it can be. And to hell with all of you. And if I figure out that the best way to live is, as I think it is to trade with you guys, then cool, I'm going to trade with you guys. And justice is going to be a derivative of the term of being selfish. But it's what comes out of. I start with what's good for me. Even on a desert island. Ayn Rand makes this point, right? Morality is essential on a desert island. Because even on a desert island, I need to figure out what's good for me. How should I live? What should I do? So yeah, all of those terms are cop-outs and an attempt to have your cake and eat it too. But it's worse than that. It's being altruistic without having the guts to actually declare what altruism really is, because it's ugly. It's ugly, and you don't want to live with that ugliness. All right, that makes sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Skylar. All right, we've got another caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
This is Neil.
Hey, Neil. How's it going?
It's going good. I wanted to ask a question on morality.
Go ahead.
Specifically, what I would say is this whole altruism thing that a lot of people on the left perpetuate, and what they would say is that you like you said, like they conflate like compassion with altruism when they don't even know why they're doing the action in the first place. Is it because it makes them happy, which is still selfish?
Well, but why does it make it happy? You see, I don't buy into that. I don't think you should help other people because it makes you happy, unless you really understand why it makes you happy. And you really understand, make sure that it's rational that it makes you happy. Just because something produces a momentary emotion in you doesn't make it right, doesn't make it just, doesn't make it moral.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, that's the difference between rational egoism and hedonism.
Yes.
And what my real point was to get across is that, like, the left and other altruists, they would say that you should have this whole concept of brotherly love and have this unconditional love for everybody. Well, I mean, yeah. I bet there's one thing I really guarantee is that none of them will love anybody who doesn't disagree, who's a neo-Nazi or whatsoever, or like Hitler.
Yeah, I know. And I want to make this point because I think it's important. You started off by saying this was an attribute of the left, but I don't think that's true. I think it's an attribute of just as much of the right. I mean, one of the main reasons that Republicans can never get anything done that actually moves us to smaller government or to less government intervention or to undoing the welfare state is because they're just as altruistic as the left. They just believe it should be voluntary altruism versus the coerced altruism of the left. But it's still altruism. And of course, they, motivated by religion, still believe in the sacrifice of the individual for some greater goal. That greater goal might be not be society, it might be God, but it's still a greater goal. So they're okay with sacrificing women to the unborn. They're okay with sacrificing all of us to whatever to right now, under nationalism, the right wants to sacrifice the individual for the sake of the state. You're buying your Chinese goods. They're cheap. They're good. You like them. They work. They're fantastic. No, but you're not supposed to buy Chinese goods because you're supposed to be America first, and you're supposed to sacrifice your well-being for the sake of America. So the right and the left both adhere to altruism almost to the same extent. It just manifests itself differently. And indeed, the guy I was debating, who was using compassion constantly as the essence of morality, was a libertarian. So this is true of libertarians, of people on the right, people on the left, everybody in the culture pretty much, except objectivists, think that morality equals some form, in diluted or undiluted form, of altruism. Every single one of them.
Wow. Didn't know that libertarians could be like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think about religion. Think about Jesus Christ. Jesus, Jordan Peterson, you know Jordan Peterson, thinks of as the superhero. He considers him a superhero. Think about what Jesus does. Jesus sacrifices himself and inflicts on himself, if you will, the most horrific death, slow and painful, really slow, painful, one of the most horrible types of death one can imagine through crucifixion. Not for sins he committed, not for something he did, but for something other people did. So he is willing to die a horrible, painful, awful death in order to redeem all of us. Now, that is the essence of altruism. That is the essence of self-sacrifice. That is the essence of, and that's what religion wants of us. That's what religion considers the ideal good. The ideal good is that who sacrifices, bleeds for the sake of other people. It's the person who turns the other cheek, who loves his enemy as himself. That is the essence of morality for the Christian. So religion is just as altruistic, and in some ways, I don't think the left could be altruistic without religion. I think it builds on the religion. Altruism comes from religion. It comes from Christianity, and then infects secular culture with its idea of self-sacrifice. So don't associate it with the left. It's very damaging when you do that because it gives the right a free pass.
That is true. That's actually my fault. On the hand, I mean,
no, not your fault.
To be honest,
we all make mistakes. We gotta just fix them.
Yeah, and honestly, the funny thing is that most people who I meet on the left are religious, and most people who I've met like on the right happen to be like non-religious, and they either are deists or atheists.
Oh wow! So are you in high school or college?
I'm in college.
Okay. Where you go to school?
I go to school in Irvine.
Okay.
IVC.
Yeah, well, that's unusual that you'd see that, because most people on the right tend to be very religious, and most people or a lot of people on the left tend to be secular, at least with regard to religion. They tend to have other religions that they replace God with. Like the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Well, thanks for listening, and thanks for calling in. Good question, and yeah, keep listening. Thanks, appreciate it. And I love it when college students, high school students call in. So please, if you're a college student out there, high school student out there, call in with a question. Love to hear from you. Love to know you're listening. We got one more caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
This is Michael.
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
Damn you, Yaron. Damn you. I called for the first time ever to not criticize you, to not challenge you. I was going to honestly ask your candid opinion, and you had to go and misrepresent Jordan Peterson. So now I got to go and correct you.
Don't do it, because I've just been reading what he's been saying lately in the UK, and it's even worse than what I said. So don't even, let's not go to Jordan Peterson. I'll do another show on Jordan, and you can call in then.
Okay, well, we don't have to, but I was just going to make a little comment, because I think you misspoke, actually.
You can make the little comment. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. If it'll make you feel better.
Okay, he doesn't regard Jesus as a superhero. He says Jesus is a meta-hero for culture, which he is, and his idea of a meta-hero is the idea of the abstract ideal.
Yes, no, that's exactly my point.
Forward.
Jesus is the abstract ideal. Jesus on the cross is an abstract ideal.
Yeah, but he is an abstract ideal. He is not the abstract ideal.
Well, so I saw a video of Jordan Peterson, and I'll find you the clip where he says Jesus is a superhero, the superhero. And he's also defined himself as a committed Christian. And, you know, he views Jesus as not the model everybody should emulate, but that's because most of us can't be the ideal. He is the abstract ideal. But to have that as an abstract ideal is one of the most evil ideas in all of human history. To have Jesus on a cross as an abstract ideal is evil. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
That's fine. No, that's fine.
Yeah,
you can totally disagree with it, but you can't disagree with that Jesus is an abstract ideal.
Oh, I agree with him completely about that, but he thinks he should be an abstract ideal. I agree completely that he is an abstract ideal in the culture, and I think that's what's killing our culture, and that's what I'm railing against. I'm railing against the idea that people have that sacrifice, that killing yourself, that for other people's sins is somehow idealized, and then people don't want to do that, right? They don't want to be Jesus. They don't want to be Mother Teresa. So they rationalize it in all kinds of ways to say, oh no, you know, if you do it, you feel good about yourself and it makes you happy or whatever. Or the ultimate is you get rewarded in the afterlife. But all of those are rationalizations. At the end of the day, what they truly believe, the essence of their morality, is a morality of death. It's a morality of sacrifice. It's a morality that somebody else is the standard for your life. All right, go ahead. You had a question and comment.
I perfectly accept that.
Good.
I perfectly accept that. Good. I just didn't want to trivialize his position. So this actually connects a little bit. So I know this is a broad question, and I apologize because this is probably the most specific I can get because I'm really grappling with this. I'm currently writing a book about this.
Just ask.
So I'm going to ask you, do ideals have a nature?
Do ideals have a nature? Wow, that's a weird question.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't hear me say that a lot. I don't know. I'd have to think about that because that's an epistemological question, and I'm not sure nature applies to ideals. I mean, what are ideals? Ideals are sets of values that we hold in our highest regards, that we strive towards, that you know we want to live up to. Do they have a meaning? Yes. Do they have do ideals have content? Yes. Do they have a nature? It depends on what you mean by nature. I think only things that are alive have a nature. Is that right? You know, does a car have a nature? I mean, no. You have to be alive to have a nature. So I don't think concepts, I mean, I might be wrong. I don't think concepts have a nature. I mean, if you mean by identity, do ideals have an identity? Then yes, of course. But I don't think nature comes from the word nature, which relates to the natural world. And in that sense, man has a nature. A cheetah has a nature. A plant has a nature. Does the concept door have a nature? I don't think so.
Well, the reason that's what I'm trying to grapple with because it's something I've never heard anybody kind of assert and try to take apart.
So I don't think so, and I don't see why it would be important. What are you trying to get at?
Well, the reason I found myself in a debate about the free market probably a couple of months after me and you got in the debate, and in the middle of me being cornered, I had like I guess you'd call it epiphany, and I took a position that I never took before, arguing for the free market, and I used the concept of time. And so it really interested me and I'm trying to build a philosophy of my own based primarily on time and just trying to see what. I know that's vague and you don't know what I mean, but I don't want to go on forever.
And just to remember that time's a derivative concept because there is no time without motion. Motion comes first, I think. So, and times is something that anyway, we could go into metaphysical discussion, and I'm not even sure I know anything about it. So, I'm not sure it's worth
like I wanted to avoid that because I don't want to take all your time. But what I'm saying is I wanted to start from the starting point because you're not supposed to start at your conclusion. You're supposed to start at your starting point, right? And I'm just letting it see where it takes me, and that's where it took me. It took me to ideals, having a nature, and I'm just trying to grapple with it.
Well, I mean, I think you have to be careful there because don't view ideals as something intrinsic. Ideals are something that human beings, the discoveries of human beings, the concepts, they're epistemological. They're not metaphysical. I mean, this is where Jordan Peterson can confuse you if you listen to too much of him, because to him, meaning is metaphysical.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Jordan Peterson is actually not that much of a free market kind of guy.
No, but I don't think
I don't follow him for
I
that.
don't think ideas of free market are the most important ideas. So I think ideas of ethics are much more important than ideas of free markets. All right.
All right. One more thing, and I'll
quickly.
leave.
Sure.
And I won't say nothing after I say it.
Sure.
I just want to hear what you have to say. If you had to choose, and I don't say they just shoot me. If you had to choose, the government controlling education or healthcare, which would be most damaging?
Oh, education, no question. No question.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, education is the heart of it. This is why, in America, the first thing the government took over was education, because it realized it followed Bismarck, and it realized that if you have education, you control the minds of young people, you control the world. It's all about education, and the government, as long as the government controls education, our ability to change the culture is seriously, seriously undermined. It's almost impossible to imagine how one could change the world as long as government controls education. So if I had to privatize one thing first, it would be education. And since very little progress is made on education, there's some progress with charter schools and school choice, but that's why it's hard for me to be optimistic. Until we actually revolutionize the way we deliver education, it's very hard. It's a real uphill battle. All right. Thanks for the call. Thanks, as always, Michael. Thanks for challenging me, correcting me, whatever, and for asking a good question, even though I had no answer to it. If you want to call in, 347-324-3075, remember to press 1 after you connect, because otherwise I don't know that you're there to ask a question. I'm going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back.
The idea that a person ought to be selfish is so alien to our culture that when people learn that Ayn Rand upheld the morality of selfishness, they are left scratching their heads. What could Rand possibly mean? In the new course, Being Selfish, Being Happy, at ARI campus, Dr. Tara Smith discusses the crucial features of Rand's morality of selfishness, what she called rational egoism, explaining what it is not, and why it is an individual's only means of achieving sustainable happiness. Visit ARI campus today and enroll in Being Selfish, Being Happy.
All right, and yes, Ayn Rand's the very presentation of selfishness as a moral ideal, as a moral option, is really a revolution in modern, at least in modern ethics. I think Aristotle was basically in this direction, but the idea that morality should be concerned about how to make your life good, how to make your life better, how to achieve your flourishing is not a part, for the most part, of modern morality since the Christians. Christianity basically framed morality as sacrifice, as self-sacrifice, as suffering, as pain, as living for others for the sake of all others, whether those others are God, society, or fill in the blank. So it's very hard for people to embrace this idea given the cultural context and the educational context context, which is all about sacrifice. And this is why my opponent in the debate kept going to compassion. Compassion is the closest, it's the nicest word in which you can mean sacrifice without seeming to mean sacrifice. Right? And why he wanted to say, oh, but Yaron, you're for charity. Yeah, at the end of the day. But that's not important morally. And he wouldn't listen when I said it wasn't important morally. And then he would say things like, yeah, I kind of agree with that. But he couldn't comprehend, and I don't think almost anybody in our culture can comprehend, a morality focused on the interests of the individual and how to achieve those interests and how to achieve that happiness and how to achieve a good life. That's what morality is about. Even if they can accept an element here, an element there, they still want to go back to, but morality is about sacrifice. But morality is about how we treat other people. But morality is about compassion. No, morality is not about compassion. I mean, it might be moral to be compassionate in certain circumstances. In other circumstances, it's not compassion. It's not moral at all to be compassionate. One is not compassionate to one's enemy. One should not be compassionate to one's enemy. One does not turn the other cheek to one's enemy. One does not love one's enemy. That is not moral. So compassion is sometimes moral, and sometimes it's not. And it's certainly never an important virtue. And when it is a virtue, it's compassion towards those who deserve one's compassion. And what does desert mean? Desert in the context of one's own life, in context of one's own value, in the context of being self-interested. All right, we got another couple of callers, and after that, we are going to, I want to talk about selfishness as a package deal. I started to do that in the debate, but didn't really flesh it out completely, and I want to make sure that you guys understand what I mean by selfishness as a package deal. And I also think, by the way capitalism is used today, it's used as a package deal. And the way a lot of concepts are used today are package deals, and I want to talk about that. But first, this call. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hi, is this me?
Yeah, it is you.
Oh, wow. Hi, I'm Ryan from the United Kingdom. I've got a question about...
Ooh, it's late at night in the United Kingdom.
I thought... Yes.
Go ahead.
I've got a question about selfishness.
Go ahead.
My friend and I were arguing, and it was about organ donation when you die. And I was arguing that I don't want to give up my organs. And then he said, well, you're dead. What does it matter? And I thought, well, you know, I shouldn't have to give them up. And he said, well, if you're dead, it's not going to affect your happiness. And I thought, I'm just going to ask Yaron about this.
Well, I'm definitely donating my organs when I die because I'm dead and I don't care about my organs anymore. But the value is that while I'm alive, I can contemplate the fact that when I die, you know, somebody, hopefully somebody good, hopefully somebody valuable, hopefully somebody productive, hopefully somebody selfish and moral will get to live because of my organs. So, you know, it's not something I don't think that's particularly important. I don't think it's high on my list, but it costs me nothing. The thought is pleasing in the sense that somebody's life is going to be better off, and I care to some extent about the future because I have children and I have people that I care for who are probably going to survive me, and I'd like, while I'm alive, I'd like to think that they will live good lives, and to the extent that I can help them live a good life by helping somebody who's going to be productive stay alive. Now, if you told me, no, your organs are going to go to neo-Nazis, then forget it. Or your organs are going to go to only to communists and leftists, then forget it. I'm only donating my organs under the assumption, as naive and benevolent as it might be, that at the end of the day, it'll land up in the body of somebody worthy of having saved his life. And remember, it's costing me nothing. Does that make sense?
Okay, and a bit of a sort of related topic. in my country, in Scotland, the government, I don't know if they've passed it yet or not, but basically you're automatically assumed that they're going to take your organs when you die, unless you basically go to them and say, no, I don't want this to happen to me.
Yeah.
Is that wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's the assumption that they own your body and that they get to decide.
Exactly.
It's also
that was my position.
It's also this what do you call it? It's based on this book written by what he calls himself a libertarian called Nudge. It's the idea that people don't do what's in their best interest. People don't do what is right, what is rational. And you have to nudge them to do it. So if you, in a sense, say, we're going to use your organs unless you tell us otherwise. Most people want to have their organs used. They just forget to click that box when they apply for whatever, to vote or whatever it is, right? So we're going to make it the default, and then they have to undo it. So it actually, they say, it forces people into their values that they would choose anyway. Now, I think that approach is despicable. I think people have to make an effort and should make an effort to choose their values. Nobody can choose your values for you. And even if somebody does choose your values for you, even if it's supposedly, quote, good for you, it's not good for you if you didn't choose it. Not properly, certainly not morally. Right? You don't get any moral credit for it, not in your own mind. And you shouldn't get it in the world out there. So no, the government should never say, you should save X. If you don't want to save X, we'll let you, but the default is going to be, you're going to do X. No, we're talking about freedom. Freedom means you get to decide what to do with your body, what to do with your money, what to do with your life. All right?
Wonderful. Okay. Can I just say that I've only known about you for a couple months. I've bought loads of your books. I think what you're doing is great.
Well,
I've started arguing your points. I'm going to uni soon, and I hope I'm gonna argue all of them. I think it's wonderful.
So where are you in the UK?
I don't know. It speaks to me.
Where are you in Scotland?
Scotland.
Where?
Argyll. I'm going to go to Glasgow, hopefully.
Okay. So
That's the university.
Yeah, I'm hoping one of these days to speak at the University of Glasgow. Maybe when you get there, you can arrange for me to visit.
Be wonderful, right?
Good. And read Ayn Rand. More important than reading me, read Ayn Rand. Read Atlas Shrugged. Read The Fountainhead.
Yeah, I've got them both.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, thanks for listening. Keep on listening. Thanks for your support. All right, got one more. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
Hi, Yaron. This is Nathan. How are you?
Hi, Nathan. I'm good. How about you?
I've been thinking about the question of why altruism and selflessness are so dominant in our culture. And, one obvious answer is because that message is spread everywhere, explicitly, implicitly, art, music, everything.
Yep.
But in listening and reading to Leonard Peikoff and Ayn Rand, they make the point then, and in history, when reason has dominated, people tend to be more pro-selfish and pro-freedom.
Yep.
And when skepticism is dominating, we get altruism.
Yep.
So I guess the question is, to what extent today do you think that the selfishness exists because it's just everywhere? And to what extent does it exist because of skepticism?
Well, I think it exists. I think it's in spite of the Enlightenment, altruism continues to be the dominant idea, I think, because of skepticism primarily. Because I think that's what makes it possible for people to evade all the counter-arguments, and particularly Rand's counter-arguments, but even the counter-arguments of the Enlightenment. So when people don't believe in reason, when people don't believe in the senses and in the human mind, then all they've got is emotion. And you can't live by emotion. You can't flourish. You can't survive. You can't thrive. So emotion causes you, if you're not living by your reason, what happens is you live in fear because you don't know what to do. You don't know what's going to lead to success. There are no principles. Fear then causes you to gravitate towards tradition. Fear causes you to gravitate towards authorities. Fear causes you to gravitate towards the group. And the group and the authorities and tradition all are telling you to be altruistic. Now, but it's even deeper than that. To be selfish, you have to exert reason. So there's no way to be selfish if you don't exert reason. So by negating reason, you've basically left people naked, intellectually, spiritually naked. And now all they can do is either revert to some kind of soft altruism, which is what most of them do, or to complete and utter cynicism and nihilism, which you're also seeing, right? But they can't be selfish because you've made them impotent in the mind, right? Impotent is applied to the mind. Mm-hmm. You've taken away the one tool that makes selfishness possible, which is the human mind. And that's what people don't get. Selfishness is all about thinking. Selfishness is all about reason. It's all about rationality. And when people are rational, so this is what happened in the Enlightenment, and I think what happens in Greece. When people understand the efficacy of reason, then the next step is, well, who reasons? Well, I do, and you do, individuals do. Then why does the group get to tell us what we can and cannot do? Why does the group get to tell us how we can and cannot live? Why does the group get to tell us what our values should and shouldn't be? Can we apply our reason, this efficacious thing that discovers the laws of motion and does all this other stuff? Why can't we apply that to how to live our own lives? And that's why the discovery of the efficacy of reason always leads to more individualistic ethics, even when it's not completely clearly defined as such. And so you see that in Greece, and you see that in the Enlightenment. And as reason is decimated, as reason is put down, what you see is the rise of cynicism, but also the rise of collectivism and the rise of a variety of different forms of altruism, whether in the form of collectivism or in the form of religion. Does that all make sense?
For those of us who are interested in spreading ideas and egoism and stuff, do you think it's important that we focus on reason, or do we just start with ethics and then, when it comes up, address it?
I mean, I think it really depends. I think it depends on what you're comfortable talking about. I think it depends on who you're talking to. But at the end of the day,
I'm wondering if there's like
I don't think there's an instruction manual. No, I don't think there's an instruction manual. So, for example, I think you'd approach it differently if you were talking to a scientist who is already committed to the efficacy of reason. And then your job is to take him from that to show him the reason applies to everything else in life and maybe move him into morality. But other people might be primarily concerned with human suffering and the whole questions around how to live a good life, and then you bring in reason, through that. Reason is essential to living that good life. And then some people are more interested in economics, and you can start with economics and bring them to understand that the freedom of economics is really dependent on a certain type of morality, which is really dependent on a certain view of epistemology, of reason. So it's all one whole, it's all integrated, and you should be able to start anywhere in the process and complete the whole, complete the circle, or the spiral, or whatever it is. Don't think there's one path by which to discover the truth, or one path in which to convince people, or one path which is the only way one can gain understanding of a concept like being selfish, or concept like capitalism, or any one of these concepts. There isn't. This is why there's no manual. There's a hierarchy, which Leonard Peikoff describes in OPA, but that hierarchy is not necessarily the best way to convince people. It depends on the context.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I know, like, when I was young and getting interested in these ideas, this idea that you would encounter at college is of these people who say you can't know reality, your senses are invalid, you don't know what you think you see, and all that stuff was just bizarre to me. And I think your typical person just doesn't think that way.
Yep.
And where your intellectual might, I don't think you really need to assume that people doubt reason, even if they have skeptical tendencies at times. I think for the most part, if they they see a tree, they think they see a tree, and you can rely on that.
I think that's right. And they use reason, they want to use reason, they believe in reason. And that's actually why, to some extent, we're likely to have more success on kind of the what I call the moderate left, the Dave Rubin left, the left that still respects reason, not the nihilist left, but the more liberal left, which is liberal in the old sense, which is more respectful of reason. Whereas on the right, they've given up on reason almost completely through religion or through nationalism or through some form like that. So, but yes, I think that the more important point is that there's no just one way in which to present knowledge. Knowledge is completely integrated. Every aspect of philosophy is integrated, and you should be able to enter at any given point, and different points of entry will be more effective depending on the person you're trying to convince, depending on the context in which you're trying to convince them. So that's the bottom line.
Tell me, my experience is this. Tell me if you agree. So it's in talking about politics, it's almost impossible to talk about politics with people without getting into ethics. I don't think that's as true with ethics and epistemology with reason, but I think you can talk about ethics without necessarily talking about reason.
I think it's very difficult because it's very difficult to pick values and virtues if you ignore reason. So I don't think you can. Reason is elemental to what selfishness is. Selfishness means what? It means use reason, have a purpose, achieve self-esteem. Those are the cardinal values. So you can't divorce the idea of selfishness and the idea of morality from reason. So I don't think...
I just meant that I don't think it's necessary as often, that with most people you can start with the assumption that they accept reason more often.
That's you're right. You can... Yeah, so I find that I can tell people, look, you need reason. Look, these are the examples of how you need reason. Everybody's, okay, we're not going to argue about that. Now, if I was arguing with an intellectual, they would go to, well... There's no such thing as reason, and we're really just dictated by our genes, or all knowledge is in flux, and there is no reality, or reality is meaning, it's not actual there. So, so yes, with a common person, you don't have to, in a sense, prove reason. You can assume reason and go on. Absolutely.
Okay. Great. Love your show. Thanks for your time.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate listening. Appreciate your calling. And by the way, to all of you out there, if you like the show, and you want to support it, you want to see it grow, Patreon, I have an account, the Yaron Brook Show. It would be great to have you contribute. We're getting close to about 300 contributors, which is a nice number. 3,000, of course, would be better. I think it would be great if all of you, everybody who listened, contributed something, even if it was $2 a month. That would be fantastic. I would certainly really, really appreciate it, and it would be a nice trade between the two of us. I put a lot of work and effort. Whatever you can afford or whatever value you place on it would be greatly appreciated. All right, we got one more caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hi, Yaron. This is Joe from New York.
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
I wanted to ask you to comment on what I consider really an inane comment leftists often invoke, especially in regard to business or Wall Street, and that is people over profits. And if I try to make some sense of what that may mean, what they mean by that phrase or mantra, it's that you shouldn't put your own personal gain or profit over people, or that is, you shouldn't gain at the expense of other people. But I'm not even sure that evaluation makes sense. It sounds like a false dichotomy to me.
Well, I mean, it's worse than a false dichotomy. It's purposefully trying to elicit this issue in morality. Profits equals selfish. People equals altruism. And what they're saying is altruism over selfishness. And what they're saying is you should be willing to sacrifice yourself, profits, for the sake of people, other people. And it's code word. It's code word for the ethic of altruism and a defeat of selfishness. And almost nobody defends profits because they know that profits are selfish. And profits are selfish. Profits about making money for oneself, about creating the money for oneself. Now, it's true that by making a profit, by creating wealth, by creating money, you are, by definition, helping other people. But it doesn't matter. Altruism is not, this is a point I make often, but altruism is not about helping other people. Altruism is about your sacrifice. It's about hurting you. It's about making you worse off. Jesus' crucifixion is not about the fact that other people are now better off because he was crucified. Are we really? Did life change for anybody after Jesus' crucifixion? No. It was about the message implicit in him sacrificing himself for us. It's about his pain, his, martyrdom. So, and did it help anybody? It didn't help anybody. Right? So it's not about helping people. So if anybody really cared about people, then they would say, we want profits. Because profits are a sign of trade, a principle. It's a sign of win-win relationships. And it's a sign of a productive mind applying itself to the problem, a problem of production, solving that problem in a way that benefits a bunch of people so that they're willing to pay for that product and give this person who has applied his mind a profit. Everybody there is better off. The people are better off and the person, the producer is better off. But that's not what they want. They don't want people to be better off. They want you to suffer. They want you to be worse off. That's the essence of altruism.
And it also seems that they use the word profit itself just really in the context of, say, the businessman or the Wall Street day trader or whatever it may be. They don't think of them going, just the average Joe going to his blue-collar job is profiting from that. But they don't use profit in that context.
No.
They only seem to use it in a negative context.
Absolutely. They use it
in regard to Wall Street for business.
They use it in the context they elicit to elicit selfishness. The whole point of using profit in this context is to say those selfish bastards. That's the context. And it comes up every single time because then they want to associate. See, this gets me to this question of a package deal. They want to elicit in people the idea, profit, that's selfish. And selfish equals, lying, stealing, cheating, son of a bitch. So the whole idea is to elicit that negative reaction that the culture has towards selfishness, to elicit that towards profit, because they hate businessmen and they hate production and they hate their success. So it's only attributed to successful businesses. It's only attributed to Wall Street. It's only attributed to those people who can be labeled selfish.
Right. Thanks very much.
Sure. Pleasure. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening to the show. By the way, you can also follow me or subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then you'll get announcements when I do a live show, and you'll get an announcement when I post new videos. And, you'll be able to see all the playlists I've created and get all the old videos. And again, it's a way in which you can help support what I'm trying to do is by subscribing. It's free by subscribing to YouTube and subscribing to iTunes, subscribing to the various channels in which this content is being produced. Now, if you want to call in, we've still got some time. It's 347-324-3075, 324-3075. And don't forget to press 1 to let me know that you want to ask a question. I've got a caller in, but he hasn't pressed 1, so I don't know if you actually want to ask a question. All right. I want to talk about this issue that I started the debate with. And the caller, I'll get to you. Let me just finish this point. And that is this package deal that in the culture exists around the idea of selfishness. And that is that in our culture, people haven't really thought about what does it take to actually live a life for oneself. What does it take to live the best life one can live for oneself? And they've allowed, if you will, the altruists, those who do not want you to be selfish, to define the term for them. And the altruists are very clear. If you're not going to be altruistic, if you're not going to self-sacrifice, if you're not going to live for others, then the only other way of living is, and by the way, Ben Shapiro does this, everybody does this. The only way then to live is by lying, cheating, stealing, or by being an emotionalist, by being a hedonist, by running after the prettiest chick at the bar, by abandoning your baby, by abandoning your family, by abandoning your job, just doing whatever the hell you feel like doing whenever you feel like doing it. So that they've created this dichotomy. You can either be Mother Teresa, or you can be a lying, cheating, emotionalist, hedonist SOB. And of course, most good people don't want to be either one of those. But they accept, because by definition almost it has to be, that Mother Teresa is the epitome of morality. They accept that they will never be moral. They live with that guilt, which gets worse and worse with age. And they can never really enjoy their life, really flourish, because they're always held back by the guilt. So, Mother Teresa is at the back of their mind. That idea of Jesus is at the back of their mind. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody will do it. But it holds them back. It prevents them from actually achieving. And what they want to avoid is being selfish, because being selfish is being an emotionalist SOB. So they're stuck. And most of them are pragmatic. Most of them kind of do what they think is good for them, but they're very cautious, and then they feel guilty about it. And the thing that it really damages, the real damage that it does, is because this is how the world is presented to people. They don't expend the thought, the effort, the energy in actually figuring out what is good for them. And this is the real tragedy. There are a lot of people out there who are depressed. There are a lot of people out there who take drugs and painkillers and all kinds of things, and all kinds of drugs, depression drugs, anxiety drugs, all kinds of drugs, because they're depressed, because they don't have a purpose, because they don't know what to do with their life, because they've been told they're worthless, because they think they're worthless, because they don't want to be a Mother Teresa, but they don't know what to do. And we're not teaching them how to live. We're not teaching them how to think. We're not teaching them, more importantly, that they should think and that they should live. We're not helping them find a purpose. The only people who help them find a purpose are religionists. That's why the appeal of religion, and why I think the left ultimately has and will lose. Because it offers people nothing. And people want something. They need and want a purpose. So, the real crime of altruism is it denies the innocent, it denies the young, it denies the students, it denies the curious the tools by which to live. Jordan Peterson talks about the great frustration of men who listen to his shows, and how frustrated they are, and how angry, and how depressed, and how they don't have purpose. And the reason they're listening to him, to Jordan, is because he gives them meaning. He tells them, make your bed. He tells them stand up straight. He tells them, take responsibility for your own life. And all that's great. But what you really need to tell people is think. Use your mind to figure out how to achieve your values. And if you're not sure what your values are, introspect and think some more. And go out there and live and try things and figure out what you love and what your passion is. And then use your mind to think, to figure out how to live better. How to achieve your ideals. So Jordan Peterson gives them certain rules, certain principles, but I think they're superficial, and I think they tend to be intrinsicist. They tend to be, I say this because it has positive psychological consequences, and that's good, but he's not getting to the root of it. He's not getting to the fundamentals. And again, the fundamental is reason, is think about your life. And he's not giving them guidance. He says, He says, actually, the pursuit of happiness is not a purpose. Now, it's not your purpose in life, but it is the purpose of life. So what you need to do is think about how to achieve your goals, which will lead to your happiness. How to set goals and achieve them, which leads to happiness. But that all requires effort. It requires discipline. It requires focus. It requires thinking. That's what selfishness is, and that's why it's so important for us to resurrect this concept of selfishness and teach people about it. Now, I was starting to talk about the package deal, and I got distracted. So the package deal is that people associated with lying, cheating, stealing, being an emotionalist. But they also associated with those positive traits that Steve Jobs exhibit, that successful people exhibit, that Jordan Peterson is teaching them about. How to succeed in life. They associate self-interest with the self-help stuff that they learn. So they have this mishmash in their heads of self-interest. But what happens is that the bad stuff, the SOB stuff, diminishes the good stuff. And it fails to be a guide. It fails to be a guide to how they should live and what they should do with their lives. And that's a tragedy because it's all mushed up, these positive ideas and these negatives. I mean, it's like capitalism today, unfortunately. Capitalism today in most people's minds is a package deal. It's a package deal of free markets with cronyism. And that's why every time you say capitalism to them, they go, oh, yeah, business control of government. No, that's not capitalism, you say to them. And the same is true of selfishness. Oh, yeah, selfishness. It's that exploiting other people for your own sake. No, that's not selfishness. It's important that these concepts be rescued because there is no alternative to them. Now, my opponent in the debate said, oh, we should use self-actualization. But what do you think would happen if we use self-actualization? Our opponents would then say, well, self-actualization just means exploiting other people to actualize yourself. And they'd create another package deal because that's their methodology. That's the way they put us down. We need to stand firm on these terms. Selfishness means a concern for one's own interest. And then the question is, how does one concern oneself with one's own interest? What is necessary in order to achieve one's own interest? And the whole SOB stuff is out. All right, so think about capitalism. Think about how impossible it is today to talk about capitalism. Well, it's the same with selfishness. There's no difference. I mean, if you open up a dictionary, Epstein kept saying, "Oh, the dictionary definition of selfishness is exploiting other people." Well, the dictionary definition of capitalism is a Marxist definition. But if we use that, we're dead. We're finished. I mean, the dictionary definition of free markets is bad. The dictionary definition of anything that is of value is going to be bad because, I mean, of value to a free market, let's say, to free market-like or to an alternative view of the world. Now, more than that, and then I'll get to the questions. Concepts are important. And the importance of concept is to make it possible for us to differentiate between things that are different. Now, there are two things under the package deal of selfishness. A true regard for oneself, productive achievement, working hard in school to get good grades. There are lots of things, good things that are associated with it. And then there's lying, cheating, stealing, being an emotionalist. Putting them together hurts us conceptually. It doesn't add any value. We need a concept that denotes those good aspects. And that's the concept, I think, of selfishness. Self-ish. Self-ish. Self. The importance of self. The importance of self is really productive, hardworking, thinking people. Thinking activity. And then a different concept for the all the bad stuff, and whether that's narcissistic or whether it's self-destructive or whether it's, we've got lots of concepts for that. We don't need to lump them all under selfish. Selfish means something else. The same with capitalism. It doesn't help to have free markets and cronyism at the same thing. You need to separate that out. Capitalism means the free market. Cronyism is cronyism. It actually belongs much more on the side of statism, of socialism and fascism and government intervention than it does on the capitalist side. So conceptual clarity is incredibly important. And we must strive to it everywhere we go, not just in morality, in every realm. We need conceptual clarity, and when we see package deals, we need to dismantle them. Now, some are important to fight for because they're foundational concepts. Selfishness and capitalism are such concepts. Others, it might be too hard to fight for them, and they're not foundational, so it's not important. Right? All right. I wanted to make one other thing to mention. I mean, Gene Epstein goes on and on in the debate about this definitions and dictionaries and everything. Ayn Rand actually had a theory of definitions, a whole epistemology of what a definition, what the purpose of a definition was. And she talks about package deals, and she talks about conceptual clarity, and she talks about how you define a term and how you take the different concretes that fall under the term and you abstract away the differences and you see the similarities. And she's got a whole theory about this. I'm not going to go into it right now. And the definition is wrong in the dictionary. Lots of definitions in the dictionary are wrong and change over time. What Ayn Rand is doing is trying to, even if the definition in the dictionary is what Gene Epstein says it is always, then she's trying to say, no, that definition is wrong. Here's what the definition should be. And that's an incredibly valuable activity. And that's what a philosophy does. He applies his theory of definitions to the definitions in the dictionary to show which definitions are right and which definitions are wrong. Okay. All right. I've made some of the points I wanted to make. Let's go to another caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Brandon.
Hey, Brandon. Go ahead.
Hey. I had a question. Ayn Rand, she wasn't really into religion or anything like that. I was wondering if some of that had to do purely with the political side of it, seeing how it had been twisted and misused, that when she came to America and she wanted to bring her philosophy of reason and everything, that it would have been dangerous for her to mix it with any kind of religion or spirituality for fear of it possibly being mistranslated at some point and being lost.
No, I don't think that's the point. I think she opposes religion because of her metaphysics and epistemology. She opposes religion because she's pro the primacy of existence, because she's pro reason as efficacious and man's basic means of survival. And that reason, so religion relies on faith. And for Ayn Rand, faith is the enemy of reason. Faith is the negation of reason. Faith says, I don't need evidence. I don't need proof. I just believe. That is anti-life. And it's anti-thinking, and it's anti-everything Ayn Rand believed in. So she rejects religion not because of politics at all, although also because of politics, but not because of politics. She rejects religion because it's the antithesis of her philosophy.
And I don't, not necessarily to be religion as structure as such, but just that I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, so you're saying, not organized religion, but maybe spirituality or just the existence of God or something like that?
Yeah, like a man's reach to exceed his grasp.
But it's the same thing, right?
Kind of.
She's not objecting to organized religion. I mean, she is, but that's not the primary. What she's primarily rejecting is mysticism. She's primarily rejecting the idea of faith. So she's not against spirituality if one can be spiritual without mysticism. Spirituality is spirit, a human spirit, in which, you know, when you listen to a great piece of music, you know, the emotion that creates in you, the conscious, the state of your consciousness can be attributed to being spiritual. But that is not the same as mystical. That is not the same as outside of reality. That's not the same as faith. So she doesn't reject spirituality per se as consciousness, basically. But what she's rejecting is any form of faith or mysticism.
I see.
And it has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with her background, and or how she grew up. It has everything to do with her philosophy, her commitment to reality and to reason.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've kind of got the feeling a lot of times that she was kind of more of just kind of leave it alone type of thing, but she was always kind of pushed into talking about it. People were always saying, you know, why can't you just be neutral on the subject, and always trying to get her to say more and over again. About
what?
So sometimes I feel that
about what?
About, you know, why don't you believe in God, or
well,
why
I mean,
can't you be neutral on the subject?
So I think the reason she left it alone originally was because she thought it was a minor issue. In the 1930s,
Right.
1940s, and 1950s, she believed religion was in decline in the United States and going away, and she didn't feel like she had to fight it because she
Right.
thought it had already lost. But by the 60s, and certainly by the 1970s, particularly in the 1970s and with the rise of Ronald Reagan, she and the Mall majority, she saw religion having a renaissance, coming back, and becoming dominant in the world around her. And now she had to speak up against it. And of course now, because religion was everywhere, people started asking more and more questions about it. Does that make sense?
Right. Nice. Yes.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Brandon, are you a college student?
Yes.
Where are you going to school?
I'm going to Oklahoma City Community College.
Okay, great. 626, that's not Oklahoma, though.
Oh, no, yeah. I have this phone out of Los Angeles or Pasadena or something.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening. And, keep listening. Read Ayn Rand. Watch her interviews, but mainly read Ayn Rand. And for those of you who really want to delve into some of these topics more deeply, the best thing you can do is listen to Leonard Peikoff's courses on ARI Campus, AynRand.org/campus. And there's some fabulous courses by Leonard Peikoff where he really goes deep into these issues. And it's not complicated, it's not boring. He's the best lecturer and teacher ever. So please go listen to Leonard. If I can just be the gate by which you enter, can I be the entertainment that gets you ultimately to listen to Peikoff and to read Ayn Rand in depth, then I've made it in life. If you really want answers to deeper philosophical questions, Leonard Peikoff on ARI Campus for free. Doesn't cost you anything. Go do that over there. All right, we got one more caller, probably our last caller today. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
It's Michael again.
Uh-oh. What did I do? What did I say? Oh, my God. Go ahead, Michael.
No. I just wanted to clarify a term that you've used a lot. So I wanted to give you an example and tell me if you think it tracks. Sacrifice. You've used sacrifice a lot. And
thanks for reminding me.
It's morally reprehensible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say an individual decides to take an internship.
Yeah.
And he's not getting paid.
Yeah.
But he's bargaining with the future.
Yeah.
He knows that in the future.
There you go, quoting Jordan Peterson again. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, he's reasoning with his mind to see what's best for him. His goal is to, let's say, be a lawyer, and he has no experience. So he decides to be an intern at a law firm for a couple of years and work on the side.
So
is that ethical?
Let me ask you. Of course, it's ethical, but let me ask you a different question in terms of terminology. Let's say I decide.
Can I say something before you do that?
What's that? You want to say something before I do that? Sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go. Come on.
Well, the reason you said that's ethical, but I just about quoted verbatim what Jordan Peterson means when he says sacrifice.
I know, that's
He
exactly the
doesn't
point
mean
I'm getting to.
altruism.
I know. So let me ask you this. If I decide
All right.
that I'm not going to eat a lot of ice cream today, and instead I'm going to take that money, and I don't know, I'm going to buy a mutual fund. And so that money grows, and one day I have more money so I can eat more ice cream or pay for my retirement or whatever. What do you call that?
I call that self-interest.
No, but not self-interest. What do we call that? When we put some money aside today for the sake of greater returns in the future.
I call that an investment.
Yes, an investment, exactly. I consider an internship an investment. I consider staying home with the kids instead of going out, I don't know, to the movies because that's what you want, an investment. So what is it about it? So let's take this word sacrifice because it's an interesting term.
All right.
Again, sacrifice is a package deal. It has all kinds of things in it. Some belong and some don't. What does it have in it? It has Jesus on a cross. It has a guy jumping on the grenade for strangers. It has a soldier fighting for his freedom and his family and the people he believes in freedom. And it has Jordan Peterson's example of investing. All of those are sacrifices. But is there something that's common to all of them? No. So the investing and the soldier fighting for freedom are both giving up something today, in the soldier's case, risking his life, in the investment case, money or the opportunity to make money by taking an internship, for the sake of something greater in the future. So what characterizes those behaviors? I'm giving up something of lesser value today for the opportunity. There's a risk because I might not get it. Even investment is risky, right? But for the opportunity to get something greater in the future. That's one category, let's call it, of sacrifice. The other category of sacrifice is I'm giving something up really, really important. My life, my happiness, my pleasure, for what? For nothing. For other people's sins, for my duty to serve the state, for my duty to fulfill man and their lives are more important than mine, so I jump on the grenade. For whatever it is, but it's other. But there's a fundamental difference between those two things. One is I'm giving up a high value for nothing or for something in the afterlife, which is the equivalent of nothing. And the other, I'm giving up something of lesser value for something of greater value in the future. So you can't use, since that is a fundamental difference between the two, you cannot use the same concept to denote all of them. So I would say sacrifice, and this is how it's historically been used, denotes the giving up something really, really important for nothing or for something less important, and that everything else is an investment, I'm sure there are other terms for this. Bargaining. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of bargaining with the future. That's not a bad metaphor that he gives, right? Or it's not a metaphor, but it's not a bad idea of thinking about it. You're bargaining with the future. I like that. But that is not a sacrifice. A sacrifice is not considering the future in terms of what it will give to you, but just focusing on your duty in the present. That's sacrifice. And this is why I often use self-sacrifice to make it clear. What you're sacrificing is yourself, the essence of what and who you are, your values for nothing. And so to me, a lot of what Jordan Peterson says is right when he talks about sacrifice, but it's a wrong label which causes cognitive confusion among the people listening to him because he then mixes that up with Jesus on the cross, doing your duty, and true sacrifice. And that's why I think he needs to be more clear conceptually, but I don't think he wants to be really. But that's a different story.
So I want to remove Jesus for a second because that's more complex. He believes Jesus was bargaining with the future, and I don't want to get into that.
Okay, so Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa. Take Mother Teresa.
Okay.
Now, she's bargaining with the
So
future
what
too, but she's bargaining with an afterlife. And my argument is, since there is no afterlife, and since afterlife is only achieved through faith, that's not bargaining with the future. That's evading and accepting a life of misery and suffering in this life, with the hope that maybe something will happen in an afterlife. But that's sacrifice. That's real sacrifice. So Mother Teresa is a good example.
You don't actually disagree with Jordan Peterson in principle. You think he's taking the language hostage.
No, because I think the language is indicative of a disagreement. I think Jordan Peterson thinks positively of Mother Teresa, would be my guess. I haven't heard him say anything about it. And he would view her sacrifice as equivalent to the kid taking an internship in order to gain knowledge for the future. And by uniting those two under the same term, sacrifice, I think he does damage to the young people listening to him.
So say he stops using the word sacrifice and uses investment, you would agree with him?
Yes, in those examples.
So you agree with him in principle?
Well, I don't know. It depends what the principle is. I agree when he gives examples of people investing in themselves in the present for the sake of a future gain, like an internship, or working really, really, hard today so you can retire, whatever. Achieving values in the future by working hard today. I mean, of course I believe in that. That's selfish, that's self-interested, and that's an investment. But so I agree with him on the concretes. Where I disagree with him is I think he also believes in real sacrifice, in what I consider real sacrifice.
But you're just asserting that. You don't know for a fact he believes it.
No, I know for a fact he believes it because he said it. He has said it. But, I've heard him say stuff like that. But I don't have a concrete example on the tip of my mind right now.
The only thing.
But let's not argue about what Jordan Peterson says or doesn't say. What's important is the content. And the content here is an internship is not a sacrifice. An investment is not a sacrifice. Staying with your kids, given that you love your kids or given that you've committed to your kids, is not a sacrifice. Those are not sacrifices. And what I'm arguing for is a clarity, conceptual clarity. Let's take these terms and be clear what we mean. And when Jordan Peterson or whoever talks about investment, I agree with him.
I agree with you.
Good.
I agree with you. I don't believe we should surrender the language. I get frustrated when people on the left use rights and they misuse what a right is, and they say, "Oh, you got to pay for my health care. It's my right." That's not what a right is.
Sure.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yep.
But I just want to get that clarification.
Yeah. So the same is true. I get angry at people like Jordan Peterson when they use sacrifice wrongly, or when they use selfish wrongly, or when they use any of these terms in a wrong way. I just like you get upset about rights, I get even more upset because I think morality and epistemology are more important. I get even more upset when they use those terms in that way. So, I mean, it's the same principle, right? We want people to use terms, properly, with clarity.
Right.
And concepts, and I want people to understand those concepts. And you have to understand that when you associate in people's minds what are selfish investments with sacrifice, you're undercutting selfishness. You're undercutting selfishness, and you're undercutting. And I think Jordan does that on purpose because he's not. While a lot of his concrete advice is self-interested advice, it's self-improvement, it's self-help, the moral framework from which he comes is an altruistic, self-sacrificial moral framework. And so this is my frustration with him, right? I agree with some stuff he says, and I disagree with other stuff he says. And it's sad because I'd love to agree with everything he says. I'd love it if he agreed with me. But he doesn't. He doesn't agree with Ayn Rand, and he doesn't agree with Yaron Brook. And anyway.
Have you heard him speak about Ayn Rand?
Yeah. He basically says, she was a decent author, but her philosophy is meaningless. That's what he says. Okay. He's not positive in the philosophy.
Get that clarification.
What's that?
I'm sure Dave Rubin would host a debate between you two.
Well, I mean, Dave Rubin has asked him about Ayn Rand, and that's exactly what he said. He doesn't particularly he likes her novels, but he thinks she's a bad writer. And then he also says that her philosophy is not very important or not very interesting. So, he's read Ayn Rand. He's not going to get anything from me that he can't read himself. So I don't see any reason to think that I could convince him objectivism is better. But I'd be happy to debate him, and to the extent that Dave is going to organize it, it would be great. What's that?
I think you would probably agree on more than what you think. I think you're assuming a lot of stuff about him.
I'm not. This is what he said. I'm not. He said this about Ayn Rand. I'm not. Anyway, let's stop talking about Jordan Peterson. Too much Jordan Peterson. All right. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate your call. I appreciate you calling me on these things. All right. So, bottom line is, selfishness is the right term. It denotes rationally pursuing those values that enhance your life, rationally pursuing those values excludes the exploitation of other people. It excludes lying, cheating, and stealing. Why that is, we'll have to do in another episode. I'm going to do, I know I promised a whole series of shows, but I'm going to do a show on honesty and why honesty is a virtue and why being dishonest is anti-self-interest, is anti-selfish. The package deal of selfishness needs to be unpackaged. To read more about this, I recommend, obviously, The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand, particularly the first essay, The Objectivist Ethics, and the foreword to the book is very good as well and important, very important as well. I also recommend Peter Schwartz's book on self-interest, which you can get on Amazon, which is a defense of self-interest, and which is excellent. So there's plenty to read, and there's plenty to think about, and there are no excuses not to be self-interested and not to pursue your life and not to make the most of your life. Ayn Rand has given us the most amazing tool that we could imagine. The ethics of objectivism are an amazing tool for achieving flourishing, for achieving happiness, for achieving your values, for living the best life that you can live. And it's really up to you. There are no excuses. It's not like the philosophy hasn't been discovered yet. It's not like we're still in the dark ages and we're still floundering around. We have it. It's Ayn Rand. Now, do you have to think about it? You can't just read Ayn Rand and you get it automatically. You have to think about it. You have to engage your mind. You have to focus your mind. You have to think. You have to invest in yourself. But the tools, the principles, the morality, the ethics, the system of values and virtues is right there for the taking. It astounds me that people read our books and don't jump on it. Don't jump on it. Hey, Jacqueline, if you want to call in now quickly. All right? Call in now quickly and I'll take your call. So I think you've got the number, and don't forget to press 1. So there are no excuses. Go out there and live the best life that you can live. Study her ideas and stop focusing on politics. Stop focusing on the news. I know I do too, but it's after years and years and years of ultimately studying her ethics. That's what's important. What's important is how to live. What's important is making your life the best life that it can be and being really selfish. Really selfish. All right, I think we got Jacqueline because she's in the Bay Area, and that's a 408 number. Hey, Jacqueline, how's it going?
Hey, Yaron, how's it going with you?
It's good. So you had a burning question or comment?
Well, I'm not sure if it was so much of a question. I'm just, I watched the debate between you and Gene Epstein, and he kept on going back to the dictionary. It's not, find me any dictionary that says that.
Yep.
And of course that spawned me to go off on my rant of dictionaries.
Yeah, I mean, dictionaries are not definitive, and dictionary definitions change as we learn new things. And dictionaries, people who write dictionaries are often motivated by a philosophical agenda. I gave the example, if you look up capitalism, you'll see awful definitions of capitalism because the people are trying to paint in a particular light.
Yeah, and it's, you know, but Gene Epstein, he brings up an interesting point, and I thought that I was with him up to a certain point until he brings up the point that, you know, if you want to talk to people in a language that they'll understand, you have to use the language that they all you know, that we can all get on board with, right? So if my definition of selfish is different from yours, or you know, my definition of cat means dog, whatever, we're not going to be able to have any kind of communication.
Sure,
but then he took it like.
Sure, but the fact is that if we used a different word, let's use self-actualization, which he was pushing for. And I actually, instead of, I said, I'm for self-actualization. And self-actualization means living like Howard Roark. Everybody go, oh my God, that's horrible. You want to exploit other people. I mean, so it doesn't matter what word we used. What matters is the content. And the fact is, what people object to is not the word. What people object to is the content. Now, it is important in conversation with people to define your terms, to give them a definition. So when you say, you know, I'm for selfishness, you have to tell them what you're talking about, because otherwise they don't know.
Right.
But that would be true of self-actualization. Right. That would be true of grok if we decided we're going to call selfishness grok. Ayn Rand's ethics is now grokism. Well, we'd have to define it. We'd have to explain it. And as soon as
I would totally agree with that.
And as soon as people understand what it actually stands for, they'd be in rebellion with pitchforks in the streets, because they don't. It's not the word they don't want. It's the morality. It's the content that they don't want. They don't want Howard Roark. They don't want John Galt.
Yeah.
They want their altruism.
And I think that you made a really good point in the debate. I thought about, well, what is the word then? What word do we use? Because right now, when we use the word selfish, we lump people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates into that category of you know, just being motivated by pure greed at the expense of others. And I think that's like the defining the defining word or phrase of everybody's understanding of selfishness today has to do with something at the expense of others, which is completely opposite of what Ayn Rand has ever said about it.
So what you have to say,
other people to your cause.
You have to talk about rational long-term self-interest, and you have to explain that you don't include Bernie Madoff in that. So you don't go into a crowd and just yell selfish. And so you don't go into a discussion and say, I'm for selfishness, and then walk away. You say, this is what selfishness means. Bernie Madoff and all these other bad guys, they weren't selfish. Look at how self-destructive they are. Look at how awful their lives is. There's nothing selfish about the lives that they lived. They lived horrible, pathetic lives. I'm for the kind of selfishness that means thinking and producing and being honest and having a sense of justice. So you have to explain. There's just no shortcuts. It would be nice if we all had the same conceptual terminology. But by the time we have the same conceptual terminology, we will win. So we have to explain ourselves to get to the point where we all have the same conceptual terminology. What Gene Epstein wanted to do is he wanted to negate the positive idea of selfishness by talking about compassion and talking about self-actualization, words that mean nothing and actually don't amount to the values and virtues we actually believe in.
Yep.
And it's a fight we have to fight. There's no shortcuts.
Yeah, so do you want to take back the word selfish, or
Yes.
do you want to come up with a new word?
I want to take back the word selfish. It's a perfect word. Self-ish. It's about the self. It's about the self, the primacy of the self. That's what it means, and it's contrasted with selfless, no self. Here it's selfish, yes self. So it's a beautiful and it's a perfect word, and we gotta capture it. Whether it's taking it back, whether it ever had a good definition, doesn't really matter. We have to give it a good definition and hold to that definition and give it the moral weight that I think it deserves, and then call Bernie Madoff and Attila the Hun call them self-destructive, which is really what they are.
Yeah. No, that's cool. You actually you had convinced me. I was almost ready to go over to Gene Epstein's side, but you convinced me on that. So
Good.
That was pretty cool.
All
I will
right.
try to find stuff though that I disagree with you on, so that I can get you angry and
Absolutely. Love it.
have heated discussions with you.
Well, call in with stuff I disagree with. That'll be fun. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Again, you can go follow me on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can support this show and all the other shows that I do on Patreon. Thanks to those of you who support me, and thanks to all of you who listen and who, use your mind and go be selfish. Go make your life the best life that it can be. Talk to you all. Oh, tomorrow we'll have a show every day this week, every single day, even Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So tomorrow will be a news briefing. So we'll get back into the politics and the fun, the fun, ugly stuff of that happens every day. Talk to you then. Bye, everybody.